So it's been a little bit since I have done one of these vlogs where I re-examine the DCEU. Once again, I want to thank Hardboiled Entertainment for his generous donation to have me review this particular film. And let's go ahead and preface this with a few things. First and foremost, I didn't like this movie. The extra stuff did not really improve it all that much because there were plot holes in the original version. Little things that should have been in there, like revealing that the bomb in the dude's wheelchair had lead around it so Superman couldn't see it. Little things that sort of added to the manipulation of Luthor moving Batman and Superman to basically try and kill one another for the express purpose of putting Superman in a death trap one way or another. And let me say this. In concept, broad concept, this film is, by and large, not a bad idea. It's been done better, though. And it was done better in the DCEU animated film known as World's Finest. And now I understand that's an unfair comparison, given honestly the caliber of voice actors that are in the DCEU, especially the Lex Luthor being played by Clancy Brown, and then you've got the Joker being played by Mark Hamill. But the thing about this is that it kind of seems to take elements from that, and it never really gets it out. So let's go ahead and just let me just lead with that. Is that if you were disappointed in this film as much as I was, both on the initial version and the extended cut, my recommendation is to go watch World's Finest. It is a incredibly fulfilling film. It's back in the days of Kevin Conroy as Batman, and the interplay between Batman and Superman is much better. So let's get some gripes out of the way. Let's just talk about the main points that I didn't like about this movie, and then we'll talk about the positives, and then I'll talk about how I would have done it differently. So, bad part. Batman killing people and Batman using guns. Why does Batman not use a gun in the modern day? And here's the thing. Modern day Batman, like, I know that Batman has killed in the comics in the past years ago. Hasn't done it in a while. Except for the bullet that killed Darkseid in Final Crisis. But that was because, Batman using a gun in that situation was supposed to show how desperate he was to stop Darkseid. So when you have Batman just gunning dudes down in, the Batman version of Mad Max, which I guess we could call Batmax, it really makes him seem like less than what he is. And that was sort of my problem with this version of Batman. Now, people often say, well, Zack Snyder said he based this version of Batman on the Frank Miller version in The Dark Knight Returns. He did a very bad job of it. Because the Batman in The Dark Knight Returns, A, fucking loved doing what he did, first and foremost. Second, he believed in his mission, still. 3, oddly enough, he didn't kill anyone. Now, some people will point me to the part where he does, because there's a mirror in this of the scene where he grabs an M60 and shoots a guy, or at a guy with it. Well, we don't see what happened to the guy, and he doesn't get accused of murder until the end of The Dark Knight Rises Part 2, if I remember right, after Joker dies, and Joker breaks his own neck to frame Batman for killing him, because Batman starts to, because he gets driven to that point. And the reason it's so poignant in that book is because he's never done something like that before, and he's been driven to a breaking point, and then he stops himself. He's basically paralyzed Joker, but, he didn't kill him. So, there is that. Why he didn't do it earlier is beyond me. No, I'm kidding. But here's the reason, and I know that a lot of people don't like the idea that Batman does not kill. So, let me say this. When you take away the idea of Batman sparing life, he loses any and all moral authority in this particular scenario. You can tell he feels justified because this is a very paranoid Batman. But he's not justified at all in what he does. You know, because you look at the opening scene and you see the chaos of what's going around in the battle between Superman and Zod. I can't lay that at Superman's feet. No sensible person would. And that's the problem, is that the script is asking you to not be sensible. And I can't do it. I cannot do it. So when Batman goes after Superman, under the logic of this is a man who must be checked by humanity, he comes across like a hypocrite. Because Batman should be checked by humanity too. Because he's fucking killing people with miniguns and shit. Like, that's not Batman, it's Bat Rambo. Heck, Rambo didn't kill anybody in the first movie. You know, it's like fucking shit. Rambo only killed other people in other militaries, oddly enough. In fact, if you think about it, in Rambo 2 and 3, Rambo does nothing that would be against the Geneva Convention. Batman, on the other hand, and that's kind of my problem, Scott Snyder turns Batman into a terrorist. And I hate it. So, without that moral high ground for Batman to go on, his logic comes across like this is a paranoid serial killer, more so than it is somebody who's trying to check a superior or another power that humanity has no say on. And it really just rings hollow. You know, the whole situation does. Superman, on the other hand, comes across like the last sane man in an insane world. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that's what it comes across as. Now, let me say this. The portrayal of Superman in this film is better than Man of Steel. It portrays Clark as humble. It portrays Clark as... it gets a lot of the things right that Man of Steel did, but in this one, yeah, he's not trying to kill anybody. He's actively avoiding it. And I really like that about it, because there's always been an understanding with Superman that if he kills, the whole world would be scared of him, which they are in this film, which is again another part of the problem, because you could have had a skeptical world around Superman without having him kill someone prior. Again, like I've said before, this is somebody who knows hand-to-hand combat. If you have a person under the chin like this, and their head is... First off, they're not going to be able to move their head. Second, to get leverage to snap their neck, to have the strength to do so, you have the exact same strength to put your right arm on your bicep and bring your left arm back and choke them unconscious. So, anyway, I've already made that point before. Point is that the premise really doesn't work because of the last film's failings. So it is kind of Scott Snyder's own fault, him and Dave Goyer. They kind of put themselves in this situation, but regardless, that is the general issue that we find is... I'm sorry I keep closing my eye. My contact's been bugging me all night. The whole killing thing, it misses the mark for me. And I'll do a whole different video about why I hate it when superheroes kill people. Like, just flat out kill someone for the sake of killing them. Instead of them being killed by some other method. Which, again, we'll go over another time. But that's the big problem, is that with Batman losing a moral ground to stand on, his skepticism comes across as paranoia, and he is written as paranoid in this. And I hate that. I hate the idea of a paranoid Batman when Bruce Wayne is such a cold, calculating individual. What else do I hate? Lex Luthor in this. Jesse Eisenberg sucks as Lex Luthor. I know they were, like, he's Alexander Luthor Jr. technically in this, but every time I watch this film and I listen to his lines and I see his eccentricities, I keep thinking to myself, this would be so much better if it were portrayed by a cold, calculating, bald Clancy Brown, the same man who voiced him in Superman the Animated Series. And the lines would have been delivered so much better because Clancy Brown's voice is just wonderful. I love Clancy Brown, for those of you who don't know. I've loved him ever since I saw him in Highlander. So, God, he was so good in Highlander. The Kurgan is a great freaking villain if you've never seen Highlander. Anyway, as it stands, Jesse Eisenberg would have been a better Joker than Lex Luthor. Because the thing about Alexander Luthor Jr. in the comics is that he's cold and calculating too. He's just younger. You know, if you read, I think it's Infinite Crisis is the one that Jeff Johns wrote. Yeah, Infinite Crisis. It was him and Perez, I think, did the art on that one, oddly enough. But regardless, great series too. But again, he was very cold and calculating. Younger, less experienced, but very cold and calculating. And this one comes across as kind of, one step away from goofy evil. Again, like he's trying to be the Joker. This character, this version of Lex Luthor, is like what Tumblr thinks capitalists act like. It's like, it's really, really shallow in a lot of ways. They're trying to make him creepy, they're trying to make him evil, and it just doesn't work. Again, Eisenberg would have been a great Joker. And oddly enough, I legitimately think that if they had Joker and Luthor be the minds behind this like they are in World's Finest, and you bring somebody else in to play Luthor, then the movie would have been infinitely better right out of the gate, because you could have Joker being the one bringing in the kryptonite and things like that, and you could have things along those lines. So, yeah, those are the big gripes. And what's weird about all of this, though, is oddly enough, What bothers me the most is that Ben Affleck, upon a second look, is a better Bruce Wayne than I gave him credit for. He has the composure, he has the posture of a Bruce Wayne. Very proper, very, very disciplined, very, very conscious of his surroundings, so on and so forth, and is able to mask into a crowd very well. I really liked that sort of a feel from Affleck in this film. Again, his Batman is just not there. But, again, that's more the fault of the script than his acting, I have to say. Which is so weird to me, because Dave Goyer is a writer who wrote the best Batman we've seen in film in the Dark Knight trilogy. And yet, here we are. And I say that as like the most consistent Batman throughout portrayals. I'm not saying that Michael Keaton was a bad Batman at all. He wasn't as an actor, but again, the script betrayed him in those films too, because those films are Batman in anything but name. But regardless, the portrayal or the casting is not bad when you look at it on paper. Eisenberg is a top-notch actor. He's a very talented guy. Henry Cavill, very talented guy. Ben Affleck, very talented guy. Though I personally think he's a better director than an actor. He's won an Oscar for direction. In some ways, I honestly wonder if he should have directed this film instead of Scott Snyder. Gal Gadot, as many of you know, I am head over heels for this woman as Wonder Woman. She's phenomenal. You couldn't get better casting for Wonder Woman than Gal Gadot. And I'll get to her in a second about the things that I like about this. I love Amy Adams as Lois Lane, not just because she's hot, mind you. It's a good chunk of it, but but I really enjoy her as Lois Lane. She is easily the most Lois that we've seen Lois Lane, very pushy, very aggressive sort of journalist. I like that. And again, let's go ahead and move into the things I like. I really like Henry Cavill as Superman. I'm very disappointed to see him leave the role. I'm hoping that someday he will come back to it because he is excellent as Superman. I love him as Superman, especially in this because lo and behold, he is the hero of this film. Like that's like he is the main hero, and it's unfortunate that it's such a cynical look at the dynamic between these two heroes, because if you really could portray him as a man with superpowers instead of like the messianic imagery, which I think is pointless and silly and misses the point of Superman completely. I mean, fuck, Brian Michael Bendis gets it better than these folks do. And that's sad, because Bendis is the worst Superman writer since Jeff Loeb. But, sorry. The thing about it is that in this, he is so truth, justice, in the American way that it makes my teeth hurt from how sweet it is. But that's what he's supposed to be. The reason that he is going after Batman is because the civil liberties of people within the United States are being violated. Jon Stewart, oddly enough, really, I don't remember if this was in the original version, but, they had him say, he could have the Constitution as a cape, but he would think it's too on the nose. That really is Superman in a lot of ways. He believes in life. He believes in hope. He believes in truth, justice, the American way. He believes in the God-given rights of human beings and all living things. It is that sort of unflinching, heroic nature is why I love Superman. He, in a lot of ways, and he and Captain America, are the big goods of their respective universes because they believe in those ideals. And that is why I love these characters so much, and why, I'm very disappointed to see Henry Cavill go. I'm very disappointed to see Chris Evans leaving the role of Captain America. Yeah. But I love Henry Cavill as Superman. Another thing, Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, former Israeli soldier, was a fitness instructor, if I recall correctly, for new recruits. Strong woman, tough woman, but so strikingly beautiful that you can't turn away from her when you see her. Oddly enough, that also describes Diana Prince in the comics. There is no better, there's no better casting for this character, and she owns it so well. And yeah, I adore Gal Gadot in this role, and I'm assuming at some point I'm going to get to re-examine Wonder Woman, and there will be nothing but gushing from me about that film. I will tell you that right now. Spoilers. What else did I really like about this movie? I've always liked it's. I think it's Diane Lane who portrays Martha Kent, or Ma Kent. Stuff like that. But let me talk a little bit. Those are the things I like. So the casting is good. Some of the characters are good and enjoyable. But there was potential here, and that's what I think for me is most frustrating. Is there was potential here. So let's talk about how I would have done things a little bit differently. Hopefully this doesn't run the video too long. I'm almost at 20 minutes already. But one thing I would do differently right out of the gate is Batman does not kill. He does not kill, and he will never cross that line. But dear God, has he become considerably more violent. And that would be something that I would emphasize. That his another thing I would set up is that Jim Gordon is not the commissioner of police. So without his backup at the police department, he's become much more brutal and distrusting of police officers. You could set up that, corruption has started to take over in Gotham City, and those sorts of things would make more sense for a cynical Batman, because if he's been in the game for 10, 20 years now, and everything has sort of like his support net has fallen out from under him. You can mention, of course, Jason Todd's dead. You could talk about Dick Grayson being in a different city, so he doesn't have Dick to rely on anymore. He hasn't met He hasn't met Tim Drake yet, or something along those lines. Like, that would be a good way to set up his universe of Batman's alone. He doesn't have a support network except for Alfred, and he's kind of losing himself to the Bat, and he's becoming more brutal, and he's crippling men for life, and things along those lines. And it's disturbing a lot of people. You know, he's starting to live closer to the edge. It almost feels like he's quasi-suicidal, like he's on a death mission. And that sort of thing, I feel like would have been a better way to introduce the character and to make him seem that much more frightening. Because he doesn't really seem frightening at all. Another thing I would do is I would get rid of the fucking bat condom fucking outfit. Like, I get he was going for the Frank Miller look. It doesn't look good. It doesn't. That's the problem with the Frank Miller look. It only looks good when it's being drawn by Frank Miller. You know, it's not good in live action. It's not good in motion. I would go to more of a practical look. That's why I've always been a big fan of the Batman Arkham Knight suit, where the pieces of it sort of pull and come together in bits, so it allows for more mobility, but yet doesn't sacrifice armoring. That costume he wears does not look bulletproof, and that's the problem. But I would still continue with the manipulations of Lex Luthor, and I would emphasize his problem a bit better with the concept of deity and all that is. And what I would do is the speech that he gives to the senator in his personal library, I would have be more along the lines of why he doesn't believe in God, or why he doesn't believe in absolute power, and why he thinks that this is our home, this is Earth, this should be our place to reign, and yet here comes this man who we don't know where he's come from, who we don't know what his true purpose is. You know, we saw him destroy this massive piece of alien technology and defeat all of these other beings from the same planet as he is, and we're just supposed to assume that he doesn't want something similar, or he doesn't want this planet for himself. Or there's several paranoid reasons you could come up for Lex Luthor, but the main thing is that he believes that man should self-determine, and that reason for that, I would get rid of the Luthor Jr. thing and have him be a self-made man, because that is important to the character of Lex Luthor. He has to be self-made. He has to be someone who came up and became a titan of industry. His parents didn't have to give him this. He's not like Bruce Wayne or like or Oliver Queen or anyone along those lines. He's Lex Luthor. He is a titan of industry, self-made. You know, you give this impression that this is also one of the most brilliant men on Earth as well, and he crafted everything with his own two hands. And that lack really just doesn't hit very well. Like, it really just makes it seem like there's just this goofy atheist milady brat who is, you know, trying to kill Superman. But anyway, so that's what I would do, is I would definitely recast Lex Luthor. You could bring the Joker in. Again, like I said, Eisenberg would have been a better Joker. Another thing I would do is KG Beast is in this film. The Russian dude. I would let him be KG Beast. KG Beast is a good villain. Like, just give him the outfit or something. Just don't call him KG Beast if you don't want to. But KG Beast is fucking intimidating as shit, man. Bring him in. You know, like, that would have given it much more of a sense of grounding in DC lore. But anyway, you know, I like the manipulations, the framing of Superman for murder. Like, the plan that Luthor has is not bad. Another thing that I would not do, no Doomsday. Not a good idea. In fact, I wouldn't even kill off Superman. I think that was another big problem that the film had, is it wasted the death of Superman and Doomsday and that conflict to bring the Justice League together. Well, why does it have to be Doomsday? Why can't it be the Eradicator? Explain that one to me. I understand the Eradicator is considerably more... Well, he's not even that more obscure. It comes from the same fucking arc. in the comic books. It's the return of the reign of the Superman. It's rather the arc right after the reign of the Superman. So I don't get that either. You know, there are different elements of this that just bug the fuck out of me. So yeah, what the weird thing about this is like I said, in concept of the idea of Lex Luthor manipulating Batman and Superman against one another to hopefully eliminate one or both is not a bad idea. Not a bad idea at all. But the execution is the big problem here. And that's kind of one thing that I find interesting about the DCEU, is oftentimes whenever it's bad, it's in execution, not concept. But then again, that's sort of the problem with David Goyer and Scott Snyder in general, is oftentimes when they're great, they are executing it 100%. Like David Goyer in the Dark Knight trilogy, with Scott Snyder, it would be easily 300. So, needless to say, though, I am still disappointed with this film, even after seeing this extended cut, this Ultimate Edition. It could have been so much more than it was, and I think that this version has basically just, more than anything, it has just sort of instilled that in me. Just the idea it could have been so much more than it was. So, that's unfortunate. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Again, it's just unfortunate. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully we'll see what's next when it comes to these sorts of movies, and I can talk a little bit more about how things could have gone differently for them. But until that time, my name is Micah Curtis. I'll see you next time.